On our 5th wedding anniversary, my husband came home holding hands with his pregnant mistress, knelt on the floor, and begged me for a divorce. My mother-in-law cursed me for being a hen that couldn't lay eggs, put my jewelry around the other woman's neck, threw me out of the house, and changed the locks right in front of everyone. They thought I would cry, scream, fall apart. Instead, an ambulance from the psychiatric hospital showed up, the police came, a termination letter from the company was mailed out, and I stood across the street, watching him get taken away. Today is our 5th wedding anniversary. My phone screen lit up and went dark, over and over again. I sent him 3 messages and made 2 calls. The last text read, "The food's getting cold, where are you?" No reply. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The oil on the sweet and sour ribs had congealed into a pale white film. The shrimp curled up after cooling, as if mocking me. At 1 in the morning, I fell asleep face down on the dining table, the candles burned all the way down, wax spilling everywhere. At 6 a.m., the sound of a key turning in the lock startled me awake. David pushed the door open. A woman followed behind him. Her lower belly was slightly rounded, one hand resting protectively over it, as if guarding a priceless treasure. "Lily," David said without looking at me, his eyes fixed on the floor. "We need to talk." The woman stood behind him, but her gaze was locked on me. I'd seen that look before, the same look the prettiest girl in my class had worn as a child when she snatched away the handicraft I'd worked so hard on. "Talk about what?" My voice was calm, so calm it surprised even me. David dropped to his knees with a thud, not toward me, just down, in that direction. In that posture, his knees hit the floor with a dull sound. "Amy is pregnant," he said, 3 months. The word stabbed straight into my heart. No, not a knife. An ice pick, cold and sharp. When it went in, there was no pain at first, just cold. So cold it seeped into my bones. My mother-in-law rushed out of the guest room. She'd said she was coming to the city for a medical checkup a month ago and never left. "She's pregnant?" Her voice was shrill. "A boy or a girl? Did you check yet?" She didn't look at me at all. She rushed straight to Amy and reached out to touch her belly. "Mom, it's still early," Amy said sweetly, her voice soft and delicate, but the doctor hinted it might be a boy. A boy! My mother-in-law turned to David. Eyes glowing, I knew it. "Lily's belly is useless. 5 years of marriage and she hasn't produced a damn thing." David was still kneeling, but his back straightened. "Lily, I'm sorry," he said, "but I can't abandon this child. Let's get a divorce." "Divorce? Absolutely." My mother-in-law cut in. "Amy can give us a son. You're just sitting on the toilet and never taking a dump. What right do you have to block her? Taking up space and producing nothing." After 5 years of marriage, I finally realized that in my mother-in-law's eyes, that was all I was. "I don't want the house or the savings," David said, lifting his head and finally looking at me. "I'll leave with nothing. Consider it compensation." He looked so sincere, so tormented, as if this decision were tearing his heart apart. I might have believed him if I hadn't seen him flash Amy an okay sign behind his back with his right hand as he spoke. My heart clenched painfully. Breathing became difficult, but I heard my own voice say, "Fine, I agree to the divorce." David's eyes lit up. "That's more like it." My mother-in-law cheered. "At least you know your place." Amy smiled. The smile was blinding like the midday sun. I lowered my head, pretending to wipe away tears. Inside my pocket, my right hand gently pressed the stop button on the recorder. From the moment he said "we need to talk" until now, 1 minute and 17 seconds, more than enough. "We'll draft the agreement tomorrow," David said as he stood up, dust marks on both knees. "You should calm down." The 3 of them, my mother-in-law supporting Amy, David following behind like he was escorting a priceless artifact, walked into the guest room. The door closed. On my wedding anniversary, my husband, the woman carrying his child, and my mother-in-law were laughing together in the guest room. I sat in front of the stone-cold food, picked up my chopsticks, and put a piece of sweet and sour rib into my mouth. Cold, greasy, disgusting. I chewed it up and swallowed. Not a single tear fell. At 7 the next morning, they woke up. I hadn't slept all night. I sat on the couch, eyes dry, mind razor sharp. David came out first. He froze when he saw me. "You didn't sleep?" "Couldn't," I said. He avoided my gaze and went into the kitchen. I heard the fridge open, milk taken out, the brand I'd bought specially yesterday, his favorite. Amy and my mother-in-law came out together. Amy had changed into a loose nightgown, my nightgown, pink, silk. The one I bought myself for my birthday last year and wore only once. This fabric feels amazing, Amy said, touching the sleeve. David, can I wear this from now on? If you like it, wear it, David replied casually from the kitchen. My mother-in-law pulled Amy to the dining table, the table I'd cleaned spotless yesterday, and shouted at me, Lily, make breakfast. Amy needs nutrition now. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. David was frying eggs, his movements practiced, in 5 years. He'd entered the kitchen fewer than 10 times. I'll do it, I said. No need, he said without looking at me. Amy likes my eggs sunny side up, runny yolk. I stood at the kitchen doorway, watching his back. This man, who had shared my bed for 5 years, was now frying eggs for another woman. At the table, Amy sat in my seat. David sat beside her, sliding the egg toward her and carefully cutting off the burnt edges. David, you're so good to me, Amy said sweetly. My mother-in-law sipped her porridge. Amy, this will be your home from now on. Don't be shy. If you want anything, just tell Mom. Mom. She told Amy to call her Mom. My fingernails dug into my palm. It hurt, but it kept me awake. After breakfast, my mother-in-law helped Amy onto the couch and turned on the TV. Then she turned and walked straight toward the bedroom David and I shared. Mom, what are you doing? David asked. Amy's living here now. We need to make space, she said matter-of-factly. Lily's stuff has to be cleared out. It takes up too much room. She opened my closet and started throwing clothes out. These are all outdated, she said, holding up a dress I'd bought just last month. The color's so dull it makes you look like an old woman. She tossed it onto the floor. Then she opened my jewelry box. It was rosewood, carved with flowers. The last thing my mother left me. Oh, you've got jewelry, my mother-in-law said. Eyes lighting up, she pulled out a diamond necklace. David gave it to me on my birthday in our 3rd year of marriage. Back then, he had said, Lily, when we have more money, I'll buy you an even better one. This one's nice, my mother-in-law said, holding it up to the light. Amy, come here, Mom will put it on you. Amy stepped over and let her fasten the necklace around her neck. The diamond sparkled at her collarbone. Do I look good, David? She spun in a small circle. David smiled. You do, my necklace, on another woman's neck, my husband, smiling at her. Consider this compensation. My mother-in-law said to me, you never wear it anyway. Amy's pregnant, she needs something presentable. Then she dug out my bank book. I earned $6,000 a month. $4,000 went to the household. $2,000 I kept for myself. Over 5 years, I'd saved $80,000. Well, look at that savings. Her eyes shone even brighter. This is perfect. Amy needs nutrition during pregnancy. Childbirth costs money, and later there'll be formula and diapers. Mom, David finally spoke. That's Lily's money. What do you mean her money or your money? She snapped. You're not divorced yet. That's marital property. Besides, she didn't give our family a child for 5 years. Shouldn't she compensate the Chen family? She took my bank book back to the living room and handed it to Amy. Keep it safe. This is Mom's welcome gift to you. Amy took it, smiling even sweeter. Thank you, Mom. I stood at the bedroom doorway, watching it all. My clothes were scattered across the floor. My jewelry box was empty. My bank book was in someone else's hands. David walked over and lowered his voice. Lily, don't make a scene. You're leaving anyway. Just think of these things as compensation for Amy. She's carrying my child. It's not easy compensation. I was supposed to compensate them. I nodded. My voice soft. Okay. I crouched down and began picking up my clothes. 1 piece, 2 pieces, folded neatly, placed into my suitcase. My mother-in-law paced around me. Continuing to rummage through my drawers, she pulled out my photo album and flipped through it. What are these photos? She scoffed. Look how skinny you used to be. Now you're so fat. She flipped to my wedding photo with David. In the picture, I wore a white gown. Smiling so wide my eyes curved like crescents. David had his arm around me, his expression gentle. She stared at the photo for a few seconds. Then she tore it. Re-up. The photo split down the middle, my face torn in half, David's face torn in half. The past is the past, she said, tossing the pieces into the trash. People need to move forward. I stopped what I was doing and looked at the scraps in the trash can. 5 years ago, on this very day, we stood in a church. When he said I do, there were stars in his eyes. Now those stars were shattered, lying in the trash along with the photo. I went back to folding clothes, one by one, neatly into the suitcase. My fingernails dug deeper into my palm, blood seeped out. But I felt no pain, because I was counting how many things my mother-in-law took from me. 12 pieces of jewelry, 1 bankbook, 3,700 in cash, 17 cosmetics, 8 bottles of skincare, counting how many times David said Amy, 5 times at breakfast, 11 times during morning conversation, 8 times at lunch, counting how many times Amy looked at me, each time with the gaze of a victor, mixed with pity and smugness, 27 times. When I reached 100, I zipped up the suitcase. I'll stay at a friend's place tonight, I said. Send me the divorce agreement once it's finalized. David visibly relaxed. Okay. Amy touched her belly and smiled. Take care, Sister Lily. My mother-in-law didn't even look up. She was examining a pair of gold earrings she'd found in my drawer. These are good quality. They'll fetch a nice price. I dragged my suitcase to the door. Then I turned back for one last look. My home. No, my former home. David was peeling an apple for Amy, the peel thin and unbroken. Amy leaned against his shoulder, smiling at the TV. My mother-in-law sat on the other side, holding my gold earrings up to the light. The 3 of them looked like a family of 3, warm, harmonious. I closed the door. The motion sensor light in the hallway flicked on then off again. I stood in the darkness for a long time. Then I pulled out my phone. In my contacts, there was a name I hadn't called in ages. Dr. Lee, psychiatry, chief physician. I dialed, hello, Dr. Lee? This is Lily. I'd like to ask, if someone suddenly shows memory confusion, logical contradictions, and delusional symptoms, how should that be handled? Dr. Lee's voice on the other end turned serious. What exactly is the situation? I looked at the tightly closed door, my voice calm. As if talking about someone else, my husband. He seems to be sick. 3 days later, I went back home. When David opened the door, his face didn't look good. Why are you here? To get the rest of my things, I said. The place had completely changed. My floral curtains were gone, replaced with heavy dark red ones. My houseplants had disappeared, swapped out for tacky plastic flowers. The sofa was covered with lace throws Amy liked. Amy sat on the couch, wearing another one of my nightgowns. When she saw me, she said nothing, only rested a hand on her belly. My mother-in-law came out of the kitchen carrying a bowl of soup. Oh, you're back. Perfect timing. Come take a look at the chicken soup we made for Amy. She set it in front of Amy and blew on it. Careful, it's hot. I walked into the bedroom. In the closet, my clothes were all gone, replaced by Amy's. On the vanity, my makeup had been dumped into a cardboard box and shoved into a corner, already coated with dust. Lily, David followed me in and closed the door. I've drafted the agreement. Take a look. He pulled a document from the drawer and handed it to me. I opened it. Under property division it read, the husband voluntarily relinquishes ownership of the house, savings, and all shared assets. The wife shall receive all of it. Below that was the signature line. He had already signed. Sign it, he said. Once you do, we'll go finalize everything. I didn't sign. I placed the agreement on the bed and looked at him. David, I want to ask you something. What? Amy's baby. Is it really yours? His face changed instantly. What do you mean? Nothing, I said softly. It just feels sudden. How long have you known each other? His eyes flickered. 6 months. No, 8. Last time I asked, you said 3. I said, I remembered wrong. His voice rose. Lily, what are you trying to say? If you don't want a divorce, just say it. What I'm saying is, I looked straight at him, unblinking. Are you sure that child is yours? Are you sure Amy didn't lie to you? He froze. I heard. I continued, lowering my voice even more, almost like a whisper, that Amy used to work at a bar. She met a lot of people there. So how did she suddenly end up pregnant with your child? How do you know it's really yours? David's face began to drain of color. She said it was mine, he murmured. She said she was only with me. And you just believed her because she said so. I tilted my head slightly. David, you used to be smart. Since when do you believe everything people tell you? He took a step back and bumped into the closet. You're talking nonsense. I'm not, I said calmly. I'm just worried about you. Worried you're being fooled. Worried you might be raising someone else's child. His breathing grew rapid. His eyes darted around the room. Anywhere but at me, she also said. I went on, every word carefully fabricated, but delivered with conviction, that if it's a boy, he'll take your last name. If it's a girl, she'll give the baby her own. And she said once the baby's born, she'll move her mother in. Your mom and her mom to elderly women. Do you think this place is big enough? And no, that won't happen. He shook his head. Why wouldn't it? I stepped closer, my voice softer, almost hypnotic. She also said that once the divorce is finalized, you'll transfer the house to her. She said that's what you promised. I never promised that, he shouted. I only said she could live here. I never said I'd give her the house. The door suddenly flew open. My mother-in-law rushed in. What's going on? Why are you yelling? Amy followed, bracing herself against the doorframe, eyes red. David? What's wrong? David looked at Amy. His expression complicated. Amy, he said hoarsely, the baby. Is it really mine? Amy's face changed instantly. What do you mean? I, he stammered. Lily said. She said you believe her? Amy screamed. David, I'm pregnant for you. I'm suffering for you. And now you're doubting me? She burst into tears, big drops streaming down her face. My mother-in-law exploded. Lily, you poisonous woman, stirring trouble. Get out of here. She lunged forward and shoved me. I stumbled back a few steps but didn't fall. Mom, please calm down, I said evenly. I'm just worried about David lately. His mental state doesn't seem quite right. What nonsense are you spouting? She snapped. It's true, I said, looking straight at David. He called me yesterday and said some very strange things. David jerked his head up. When did I ever call you? Yesterday afternoon, 3 p.m. I said firmly. You said you dreamed you were pregnant. You said men can get pregnant too. You even said the baby in Amy's belly was actually yours. Dead silence filled the room. My mother-in-law's mouth fell open. Amy forgot to cry. David's expression. That expression is something I'll never forget. Confusion, fear, chaos. I said that? He asked, his voice trembling. You did. I nodded solemnly. You also said that after the baby is born, you'd breastfeed it yourself. You said men have mammary glands too. Ridiculous. My mother-in-law shrieked. How could David ever say something like that? Lily, you're insane. But David didn't deny it. He stood there, face ghostly pale, eyes empty. He was searching his memory, trying desperately to recall whether he might actually have said those things, and I knew. The moment someone begins to doubt their own memory, they've already fallen into the trap. David, Amy grabbed his arm, her voice shaking. You didn't say that, right? You didn't say something so crazy, right? David looked at her, then at me, then at his mother. I don't know, he said. That sentence was stronger than any evidence. My mother-in-law's face went white. Amy loosened her grip and stepped back, staring at David like he was a monster. I picked up the divorce agreement from the bed, folded it, and slipped it into my pocket. I'll review the agreement, I said. But David, I looked at him, my eyes full of concern. I really think you should go to the hospital. Seriously. I walked out of the bedroom, crossed the living room, and opened the front door before closing it. I glanced back once more. David was still standing there, eyes unfocused. My mother-in-law was shaking him. Son, wake up, get a grip. Amy stood off to the side, one hand on her belly, terror written all over her face. The door closed. I stood in the hallway for a moment, then pulled my phone out of my pocket. The recording function was still running. From the moment I asked, is Amy's baby really yours? Until now, 7 minutes and 43 seconds. Every word, every reaction, all recorded. I pressed stop and saved the file. File name, Evidence 001 Signs of Mental Abnormality. A week later, David called me. His voice was cold, so cold it sounded unfamiliar. Lily, come back today. Take all your things and leave, okay, I said. At 3 in the afternoon, I returned home. I didn't ring the doorbell. I used my key. The lock still worked, they hadn't changed it yet. The moment the door opened, I froze. All my belongings, everything, were stuffed into several large black trash bags and piled by the entrance. Clothes, books, makeup, photo albums, thrown there like garbage. David stood in the middle of the living room. Amy sat on the couch. My mother-in-law stood with her hands on her hips. You're here, David said. Hurry up and take your stuff, and don't come back. I crouched down and went through the bags. My clothes were wrinkled, some stained. Several pages had been torn from my books. The photo albums were water damaged, photos stuck together. I looked up. What is this supposed to mean? It means, my mother-in-law walked over, looking down at me. This house has nothing to do with you anymore. We packed your things for you. Take them and get lost. Amy laughed, her voice sharp and thin. Don't be mad, Sister Lily. We're actually doing you a favor, saving you the trouble of coming back and forth. I stood up and looked at David. Is this what you want? He avoided my eyes. Lily, we're getting divorced. It's inconvenient for you to live here. This is my home, I said. It used to be, Amy corrected. Now it's mine and David's. She stood up, walked over, and hooked her arm through his. Right, David? David nodded stiffly. Did you hear that? My mother-in-law said smugly, grab your trash and get out. Stop being an eyesore. She walked over and shoved me hard. I lost my balance and slammed into the wall. Mom, David shouted. What are you yelling for? His mother snapped. What use is a hen that can't lay eggs? Why keep her around? Get her out now. She shoved me again, harder this time. I fell to the floor, the skin on my palm scraping open. Lily. David stepped forward, about to help me up. Don't. Amy grabbed him, her voice trembling. David, my stomach hurts. He immediately turned to her. What's wrong? Do you need to go to the hospital? No. Amy leaned into his arms. It's just. Seeing her makes me feel upset. Okay. David patted her back, soothing her like a child. We won't look at her. I sat on the floor, watching them. My palm burned with pain, but it was nothing compared to what was inside. No, it wasn't pain. It was cold, so cold I felt numb. I slowly stood up and brushed the dust off my clothes. Fine, I said. I'll go. I began dragging the bags. They were heavy. I could only manage one at a time. Drag it to the door, open the door, drag it out, leave it in the hallway. Once, twice, 3 times, the 3 of them stood in the living room watching. David holding Amy, his mother beside them. Like they were watching a show. By the 4th bag, his mother grew impatient. Can you hurry up already? Stop dragging your feet. I ignored her and kept going. Finally, all the bags were outside. I stood at the doorway and took one last look. My home, what used to be my home, the key, David said, holding out his hand. I took my key off the ring and handed it to him. He took it, turned around, pulled a brand new key from a drawer, and handed it to Amy. Here, yours. Amy accepted it, smiling brightly. Thanks, David. Then David took out another new key and began changing the lock. Right in front of me, he removed the old lock and tossed it into the trash, installed the new one, tightened it. Click, the sound of the lock turning was sharp and unmistakable. All set. He tested the key and nodded in satisfaction. Much safer now. Safer. Guarding against me like I was a thief. In the hallway, Mrs. Wang from next door opened her door. She saw me, then the pile of bags at my feet, and froze. Lily. What's going on? Hello, Auntie Wang. I said with a smile. I'm moving out. Moving out. She exclaimed. What happened? My mother-in-law rushed out. What are you asking for? This is our family business, none of yours. Mrs. Wang's face darkened. Watch your mouth. I talk however I want. My mother-in-law yelled louder. My son's getting married. The new wife is pregnant. Some people refuse to leave and still have the nerve to ask questions. Amy came out too, hooking her arm through David's and pushing her belly out even more. Hello, Auntie. I'm David's fiancée. Mrs. Wang looked at me, then at them, and understood. Sympathy filled her eyes. Lily, you. I'm fine. I cut in gently. Auntie, I'll be going now. I bent down to lift the bags, too heavy. I couldn't lift them. David stood nearby, watching. He didn't move. Amy touched her belly. David, let's go back inside. I'm tired, okay? He said, supporting her as they turned and went back in. His mother shot me one last glare and followed. The door slammed shut. Mrs. Wang sighed. What a sin. Lily, do you want me to help you? No, thank you, Auntie, I said. I carried 2 bags at a time, stumbling down the stairs, the plastic cut into my hands. But I didn't stop. 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor. Finally, outside. I stacked the bags by the roadside and sat on top of them, gasping for breath. The sky was dark and heavy. Rain was coming. I took out my phone and checked the time. 4:20 p.m. Then I made a call. Hello, Dr. Lee. This is Lily. Yes, the situation has worsened. He's showing violent behavior now. He forced me out of the house and humiliated me in public. Yes, I believe compulsory medical intervention is necessary. I've prepared all the documents, diagnostic reports, audio recordings, witness statements. Okay, tomorrow morning at 9. I'll be waiting. I hung up and looked up. The rain had started, light but steady. I sat on my so-called luggage, letting the rain soak my hair and clothes. Not far away, the window of my home was lit. warm yellow light. It looked so inviting, but that was no longer my home, and it never would be again. I wiped my face, rainwater, or tears. I couldn't tell, and stood up. Then I pulled out another phone. I'd bought it earlier this week. David didn't know about it. I turned on the video camera, aimed it at that window, and zoomed in. Inside, David and Amy were kissing. His mother stood nearby, smiling, holding something in her hands, another one of my photo frames. She was taking it apart, pulling out my wedding photo with David, tearing it up. Click. I took a screenshot. Image saved. File name, evidence 004, forced eviction and abnormal behavior. The rain grew heavier. I dragged my bags, step by step, toward the street corner. A truck was waiting there, the moving service I'd ordered. The driver helped load my things and asked, "Miss, where to?" I thought for a moment, then gave him an address, the name of a budget hotel. The car started moving. Rain streamed down the windows, blurring the world outside. I leaned back in the rear seat and closed my eyes. My palms still hurt, my knees hurt, my whole body hurt, but I smiled, because I knew, tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, the ambulance would come, people in white coats would step out. They would knock on that door and say to David, "Mr. Chen, under the Mental Health Act, we are required to conduct a compulsory psychiatric evaluation." David would panic, he would resist, he would curse me, but it wouldn't matter, because the documents were complete, because the procedures were legal, because I had recordings, videos, and witnesses, because Dr. Lee was my high school classmate's uncle and he believed me, because sometimes justice needs a little help. The car stopped in front of the hotel. I got out, dragged my bags inside. The receptionist smiled. "Hello, do you have a reservation?" "Yes," I said. "Lily, all right, Ms. Lily, here's your room card. Room 1208. I took the card and walked toward the elevator. The elevator doors closed. In the mirror, my face was pale, my eyes were red and swollen. My hair hung wet against my cheeks, but I looked at my reflection and spoke. My voice was soft but clear. "The game has begun. David, are you ready?" At 8:50 a.m., the next morning, I stood outside the convenience store across from the apartment complex, a cup of soy milk in my hand, sipping it slowly. My eyes were fixed on the main gate. At 8:55, a white ambulance pulled up and stopped at the entrance. 3 people got out, 2 male doctors in white coats, and a nurse. Dr. Lee walked in front, a folder tucked under his arm. They entered the complex. I set the soy milk down, took out my phone, and turned on video recording. The camera was aimed at the gate. 9 o'clock sharp. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. At 9:03, I heard it, screaming, my mother-in-law's voice, shrill and hysterical. "What are you doing? Let go of my son." Then David's voice. "Get away from me. I'm not sick." "Lily." Lily set me up. The noise grew louder. Closer. Finally, they appeared at the gate. The 2 doctors had David pinned between them, one on each side. He was struggling violently, completely out of control. "I'm not sick. Let me go." "Lily, come out here. I know you're watching." His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, his clothes torn and twisted. Amy followed behind them, her face paper white, one hand pressed to her belly. "David, David!" My mother-in-law rushed ahead, trying to shove the doctors away, but the nurse blocked her. "Ma'am, please calm down. This is a legally mandated compulsory medical procedure." "Legal my ass," she shrieked. "You were sent by Lily. You're all in this together." A crowd had already gathered. Neighbors pointed and whispered. Mrs. Wang was there too. She saw me, froze for a second, then walked over. "Lily, what is this?" Dr. Lee says David has mental health issues and needs treatment. I said softly, "Yesterday he threw me out and pushed me." "Look." I held out my hand. The scrape on my palm was still fresh. Mrs. Wang sucked in a sharp breath. "Oh my God. He really hit you?" I nodded, my eyes reddening. "Auntie Wang, I'm scared. Yesterday he even said men can get pregnant, that he was going to give birth himself. I think he's really very sick." "What a tragedy," she murmured, shaking her head. At that moment, David saw me. His eyes widened even more. He struggled harder. "Lily, you bitch! You framed me. I'm not sick. I'm not sick." His voice was hoarse, like an animal's howl. The doctors pressed him down. "Mr. Chen, please cooperate." "Cooperate my ass." My mother-in-law lunged toward me, trying to hit me, Lily. I'll kill you. Dr. Lee blocked her, his expression stern. Ma'am, if you continue to obstruct official procedures, we will call the police. Call them. She screamed hysterically. I'm not afraid. My son isn't sick. This woman did this to him. She pointed at me, her fingers shaking. I lowered my head, my shoulders trembling, as if crying. The murmurs around us grew louder. Poor woman. He always seemed normal. How did he suddenly go crazy? I heard he cheated and kicked out his wife. Serves him right. Karma. Amy stood off to the side, completely stunned. She looked at David, then at my mother-in-law, then at me. And then she made a decision. She took a step back, turned around, and tried to slip away quietly. Amy. My mother-in-law spotted her. Where are you going? Come help us. Amy didn't look back. She walked faster. David saw her retreating figure too. He froze for a second, then let out an even more desperate scream. Amy, don't go. Amy. But she had already turned the corner and disappeared. The doctors took the opportunity to lift him into the ambulance. No. No, he muttered. Amy, the baby. My baby. The doors slammed shut. My mother-in-law threw herself against the ambulance, pounding on it. Let my son out. Let him out. Dr. Lee walked over and opened his folder. Ma'am, this is the compulsory medical decision notice. It includes a joint diagnosis from 2 psychiatrists confirming that David Chen is suffering from acute delusional disorder with violent tendencies and requires immediate treatment. This is a legal document. If you object, you may apply for a review later, but for now, it must be enforced. My mother-in-law snatched the papers, glanced at them, then ripped them to shreds. Fake. It's all fake. The scraps fluttered through the air like snow. Dr. Lee's expression didn't change. You can destroy the document. But we have copies. Please step aside. We're leaving. She refused. She collapsed onto the ground, rolling and wailing. No justice. No justice at all. They're bullying us. My son isn't sick. The nurse and doctors exchanged a look, then pulled her up and moved her aside. The ambulance started. David pressed his face against the window, staring straight at me. That look, hatred, rage, fear, confusion. I raised my phone and kept recording. Until the ambulance turned the corner and disappeared, my mother-in-law collapsed on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Neighbors surrounded her, some sympathetic, some mocking. Mrs. Wang came over and patted my shoulder. Lily, don't be too sad. If he can be cured, that's best. If not, you've done all you could. I nodded, my voice choking. Thank you, Auntie. Then I put my phone away and turned to leave. After 2 steps, I stopped and looked back. My mother-in-law was still sitting on the dirty ground, hair disheveled, crying like a madwoman. Once, she had arrogantly called me a hen that couldn't lay eggs. Once, she had torn up my wedding photos in front of me. Once, she had put my jewelry on Amy's neck. Now she sat in the filth, crying until she was hoarse. I turned and walked on. My steps felt light, because I knew this was only the beginning. David had been sent to the city mental health center, the compulsory treatment period. At least 1 month. In that month, many things would happen. For example, I would revise the divorce agreement. For example, I would visit David's company and submit certain materials. For example, my mother-in-law would try to save her son. For example, Amy would. Well, Amy had probably already run off, with my bank book, my jewelry, and the baby in her belly. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that the game had entered phase 2, the counterattack. I walked to the corner and flagged down a taxi. Where to? The driver asked. I gave him an address, David's company. The car pulled away. Sunlight was bright outside. I took out my phone and replayed the video I'd just recorded. On the screen, David struggling like a madman, my mother-in-law throwing a tantrum on the ground, neighbors watching and gossiping. Perfect. I opened WeChat and found a contact, David's direct supervisor, Mr. Liu. I sent the video, with a short message attached. Hello Mr. Liu, this is Lily Chen, David Chen's wife. I'm sorry to bother you. David has recently suffered an acute mental health episode and has been placed under compulsory psychiatric treatment. The doctors have diagnosed him with acute delusional disorder with violent tendencies. Given his current condition, he is no longer fit for work and may negatively impact the company's image. I wanted to inform you as a courtesy. I have all relevant medical documentation available and can provide it at any time if needed. I tapped send. The message quickly showed read. A few seconds later, Mr. Liu replied, received, please take care. The company will handle this appropriately. I smiled. Handle it appropriately. Which meant termination. David had spent 8 years clawing his way up, from intern to department manager. And now, overnight, it was all gone. And this was only the beginning. The taxi stopped in front of the office building. I got out and looked up at the towering glass structure. David's office was on the 18th floor. He had once proudly brought me there, pointing at the city skyline and saying, "Lily, one day I'll give you a good life." Now he was lying on a psychiatric ward bed, restrained, sedated. And I was about to go upstairs and destroy everything he had built with my own hands. I walked into the building and pressed the elevator button. 18th floor. Ding. The elevator doors opened. The game continued. On the third day after David was taken away, my mother-in-law came to find me. She didn't know where I lived, but she knew where I worked. I was an accountant at a small company, not well paid, but stable. At 5 in the afternoon, just as I stepped out of the office building, I saw her standing by the entrance. She looked much older than a few days ago. Her hair had gone gray. Her eyes were swollen and red, her clothes wrinkled and unkempt. When she saw me, she rushed over. I thought she was going to hit me, and instinctively stepped back, but she didn't. With a dull thud, she dropped to her knees. "Right in front of me, Lily. Lily, I'm begging you." She was sobbing uncontrollably, tears and snot streaming down her face. "Please let David go. He's your husband. 5 years of marriage. You can't be this heartless." People getting off work stopped to watch. "Auntie, please get up," I said calmly. "I won't get up. Not unless you agree." She clutched my leg. "David isn't sick. He really isn't. You did this to him. Give my son back to me." Her voice was loud enough to draw a crowd. Someone pulled out a phone and started recording. "Isn't this the woman whose son got sent to a mental hospital?" "Yeah, that's her. I heard he cheated and kicked his wife out, and now she's kneeling, begging the wife." "Wow. Should have thought about that earlier." The murmurs reached her ears, and she became even more hysterical. "You don't know anything. This woman set my son up. She had people drag him away. She just wants the apartment. She wants money." She pointed at me, her fingers shaking. I sighed, crouched down, and looked at her. "Auntie, David is sick. He needs treatment. That's what the doctors said, not me. The doctors were hired by you. You're all in this together." "Then call the police," I said. She froze. "Call the police?" "Yes." I stood up and pulled out my phone. "I'll help you. We'll let the police investigate, see whether David is actually sick, and whether I framed him." I dialed 911. She panicked and tried to grab my phone. "No. Don't call the police. Too late." The call had connected. "Hello, 911. I'd like to report someone publicly harassing and falsely accusing me of illegal detention." "Yes. The address is..." I gave the location. My mother-in-law collapsed onto the ground, her face drained of color. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers, one older, one younger. "What seems to be the problem?" the older officer asked. My mother-in-law scrambled up and grabbed his arm. "Officer, you have to help me. This woman had my son locked up in a mental hospital. He's not sick. She did this to him." The younger officer looked at me. "And you are?" "My name is Lily Chen," I said evenly. "David Chen is my husband. He was diagnosed with acute delusional disorder with violent tendencies and was placed under compulsory psychiatric treatment 3 days ago. This is a copy of the medical order." I took the documents from my bag and handed them over. My mother-in-law tried to snatch them back, but the officer stopped her. The older officer reviewed the paperwork carefully and nodded. "Everything is in order. This is a lawful compulsory medical procedure." "It's not lawful," she screamed. "It's fake. The documents are fake." "Ma'am," the officer said sternly, "these documents have official hospital seals, physician signatures, and a joint psychiatric diagnosis. If they were fake, that would be a felony fabrication of official documents. Are you formally accusing her of that?" My mother-in-law opened her mouth. No words came out, and I continued. "During his episode, David was violent toward me and forcibly expelled me from our home. I have evidence." I opened my phone and played the video. David struggling, screaming, "I'm not sick." My mother-in-law tearing documents, rolling on the ground, wailing. Then audio recordings, David insisting men could get pregnant, photos of my scraped palm from being shoved out, and finally, a recorded statement from Mrs. Wang. I saw it. David pushed Lily that day. My mother-in-law started trembling as she watched and listened. "No, that's not how it was," she whispered. "Ma'am," the younger officer said more gently, "your son does need treatment. The compulsory hold is for his safety and the safety of others. Please understand. I don't understand. She suddenly exploded. She just wants the apartment. She wants money. She framed my son. You're all working together. She sat on the ground, slapping her thighs and screaming. The older officer shook his head to the younger officer. Call the hospital and confirm. The younger officer made the call. A few minutes later, he hung up and nodded. Confirmed. David Chen is currently hospitalized. Preliminary diagnosis. Acute delusional disorder, treatment ongoing. Her crying stopped abruptly. She looked at the officers, then at me. Her expression shifted from rage to fear to despair. So the older officer concluded, "This is a lawful medical action. There is no illegal detention, ma'am. If you continue harassing Ms. Chen, we can cite you for disorderly conduct. Do you understand?" She lowered her head, didn't answer. "Ms. Chen," the officer turned to me. "Do you have any further requests?" "Yes," I said. "I want her to stop harassing me. Also, regarding David's medical expenses in our divorce property division, I need to discuss matters with her. That's a civil dispute," the officer replied. "We recommend mediation or legal proceedings. Understood. Thank you." The officers warned my mother-in-law a few more times, then left. The crowd slowly dispersed. Only the two of us remained. She sat on the ground, motionless like a statue. I walked over and crouched in front of her. "Auntie," I said softly, "can we talk now?" She raised her head. Her eyes were empty. "Talk about what?" "Terms," I said. "Conditions." That night, my mother-in-law came to the hotel where I was staying. I was the one who asked her to come. I told her, "If you want David out sooner, come talk." She came exhausted, defeated, hollowed out. I opened the door and let her in. The room was small. One bed, one desk, two chairs. My luggage was piled in the corner. Still unpacked, she stood by the door. Hesitant. "Sit," I said, pointing to a chair. She walked in slowly and sat down. Her back was straight, but her hands were shaking. I sat across from her. Silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Finally, she spoke. "What do you want? So you'll let David go?" "Let him go?" I smiled faintly. "Ma'am, David is sick. He's in the hospital receiving treatment. How exactly am I supposed to let him go? You know he's not sick." She suddenly looked up, eyes bloodshot. "You did this to him. Where's your proof?" I asked. She opened her mouth and said nothing. "You don't have any," I said for her, "but I do. I have recordings and videos from when he was having an episode, medical diagnoses, and neighbor testimony. If this went to court, what do you think the judge would decide?" Her face drained of color. "You also know David forced me out of the house, humiliated me in public, and shoved me. That alone is enough for a restraining order, possibly even a domestic violence lawsuit." "Domestic violence?" she whispered. "Yes, domestic violence," I said calmly. "And he cheated. He lived with his mistress. He got her pregnant. All of that works in my favor in a divorce." She began to tremble. "You may not know this," I continued evenly, "but under the law, the cheating party can lose most or all of the marital property, and given his violent behavior and mental health diagnosis, the court could award everything to me. On top of that, emotional distress damages." "All the property," she repeated. "The apartment, the savings." "Yes," I said, "the apartment, the savings, the car, everything, including the house back in your hometown, the one you were saving for his future marriage." She gasped. "That house. That's our life savings." "Second," I raised another finger. "Emotional damages, $500,000, $500,000. She screamed. "We don't have that kind of money." "You can borrow it," I said, "or sell the house. That house is worth more than that, isn't it?" She collapsed back into the chair, as if her soul had been drained. "Third," I raised a third finger. "David's medical bills are your responsibility. I won't pay a cent. Fourth, from today on, your entire family, your husband, David, and that woman are never to appear in front of me again. Ever." I finished speaking. Silence filled the room again. She lowered her head. Her shoulders shook. She was crying silently. I didn't comfort her. I waited. 5 minutes later, she looked up, her face soaked in tears. "Emily," she pleaded, "can you take a little less? The house back home is for our retirement. And $500,000, we really don't have it." I didn't respond. "David, he still has a life ahead of him," she continued. "He's sick. He needs money for treatment. If you take everything, what will he do?" Still, I said nothing. She finally understood. Begging wouldn't work. Crying wouldn't work. Slowly, She slid off the chair and knelt on the floor, just like she had earlier that afternoon, but this time, there was no audience, only the two of us, Emily. I'm kneeling for you. Her voice trembled. I was wrong before. I cursed you. I drove you out. I wasn't human. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll kowtow. She actually started bowing. Her forehead hit the floor with a dull thud. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't move. 4, 5, 6. Her forehead was turning red. 7, 8, 9. Blood seeped out. Enough. I finally said. She stopped and looked up at me. Her forehead was swollen and bleeding. This won't solve anything, I said. Then what do you want me to do? She cried. Do you want me to die? I can die if you'll just let David go. I don't want you dead, I said. I want your signature. I took 2 documents out of my bag. One was the revised divorce agreement. David would leave with nothing. All assets transferred to me, $500,000 in emotional damages. The other was a written guarantee that they would never harass me again. I slid the papers toward her. Sign these, and I'll withdraw the request for compulsory treatment. David can be discharged. She stared at the documents, her hands shaking violently. Sign. She murmured, yes, sign. I handed her the pen. She could barely hold it. The pen hovered over the signature line for a long time, Emily. She asked one last time, there's really no other way? There is, I said calmly. You don't sign, and David stays in the psychiatric hospital for at least 6 months, maybe longer. Electroshock therapy, heavy medication. Strapped to a bed, sedated. When he gets out, he'll have no job, no money, no house, and a ruined reputation, and you'll be supporting a mentally ill son while drowning in debt. She closed her eyes, tears streamed down her face, then she opened them and signed. Once on the divorce agreement, once on the guarantee. When it came time for the fingerprint, I handed her the ink pad, her thumb pressed down, a bright red print like blood. It was done. She pushed the papers back to me. I checked them carefully. Everything was in order. I took out my phone and called Dr. Lee. Hello, Dr. Lee. This is Emily Parker. Yes, the family has signed consent, right? They'll cover the medical expenses themselves. Tomorrow is fine for discharge. Thank you. I hung up. She looked at me. Eyes empty. He can come out tomorrow? She asked. Yes, I said. She nodded slowly and stood up. Her movements were stiff like an old woman, even though she was only 55. She walked to the door, hand on the handle, paused, turned back and looked at me. That look, I couldn't name it. Hatred, resentment, regret, maybe all of it. She said nothing. She opened the door and left. The door closed. I sat there, staring at the 2 documents. Her signature was crooked, like a child's handwriting. The red fingerprint burned my eyes. I looked at them for a long time. Then I smiled, and as I smiled, tears fell. Not tears of sadness, tears of release. 5 years of marriage over. Ended like this, cruel? Maybe. But I remembered the day he brought his mistress home on our anniversary, kneeling and saying, she's pregnant. That was 1,000 times crueler. I remembered him throwing my belongings out and changing the locks in front of everyone. 10,000 times crueler. I remembered his mother tearing up our wedding photo and putting my necklace on that woman. 1,000,000 times crueler. So I felt no guilt, none at all. I packed the documents away and booked a flight. The next day, David would be discharged. The next day, I would leave the city forever. I didn't go to see him, but I heard what happened when David walked out of the psychiatric hospital. His face was pale, his eyes dull. His mother supported him like a patient, though he was now healthy. They went home. At the door, they discovered the locks had been changed. By me. The divorce agreement was signed. The apartment was mine. I had every right. She called me. I didn't answer. She texted, Emily, open the door. We need our things. I replied, I've packed them. They're at the property office. Pick up the key there. They got 2 large suitcases, clothes, daily necessities, everything else, furniture, appliances, dishes was mine. They stood at the apartment gate, dragging their suitcases, homeless, broke. David tried calling his company. HR answered, David, you've been terminated. The notice has been mailed to your hometown. Given your situation, there will be no severance. Please understand. I don't understand. David screamed, I'm not sick. I was framed. HR replied coldly, David, the video of your episode circulated throughout the company. Mr. Liu said we can't keep a mentally unstable employee. Take care. The call ended. His phone slipped from his hand and shattered on the ground. Like his life, 3 months later, he was on the streets, and I moved south with the compensation money. I opened a small flower shop. I changed my name. Now I was Emily Lane, meaning Emily, finally safe, quiet, peaceful, smiling. Until one rainy afternoon, the bell on the door rang. I looked up and saw him, soaked, broken, standing there. "David, I found you," he said hoarsely. "I'm not Emily," I corrected softly. "My name is Emily Lane." He froze, then nodded. "Lane. Okay, Lane." He took a few steps closer. I caught a smell, sour, rotten, like a garbage heap. He hadn't bathed in a long time. "Is there something you need?" I asked calmly. He lowered his head, staring at his torn shoes. "I need money." "Oh," I said, $200. He looked up, his eyes full of desperation. "Just 200. I haven't eaten in 3 days. My mom is sick and can't afford medicine. My dad is still in the hospital." As he spoke, his eyes reddened once. He had been a confident department manager, tailored suits, polished shoes, a car worth tens of thousands. Now he was standing in front of his ex-wife, begging for $200. I didn't say anything. I took my wallet from under the counter and pulled out $200 bills. I handed them to him. He reached out to take them, his hands shaking violently. "Thank you." His voice cracked. "Thank you, Emily. I'm sorry for everything." "No need to thank me," I said. "This $200 is a buyout." He froze. "A buyout?" "Yes." I looked at him, my gaze cold and steady. "From now on, we're even. You don't owe me anything. And I don't hate you anymore. We're strangers. So don't come looking for me again, not even once." He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. But in the end, he said nothing. He clutched the money, turned around, and walked out of the flower shop. The door closed. The wind chime rang softly. I walked to the window and watched his back. The rain was still falling. He was hunched over, moving slowly, disappearing around the corner, like a stray dog with nowhere to go. I watched for a long time, then I turned back to the counter, picked up my scissors, and continued trimming the roses. A thorn pricked my finger. A bead of blood surfaced. I wiped it away with a tissue and kept cutting, snip by snip, removing the yellowed leaves, cutting away the excess branches, until only the most vibrant part of the rose remained. Then I placed it into a vase, added water. The scent in the shop slowly spread. Roses, lilies, jasmine, blended together, soft, rich, beautiful. I took a deep breath and smiled. Outside the window, the rain stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling onto the wet street, making it shimmer. A new day, a new life. I picked up the spray bottle and watered the flowers. Droplets clung to the petals like crystal tears, but they weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of rebirth.